one time I just sat down with everyone and they were very straightforward about everything. And they said, look, we're all just people. Even the judges, they're just people. If you put them on these pedestals, you're just going to get nervous and you're just going to make mistakes. And instead, just take your argument for what it is, take the facts, take the law, and present it to them like they're actual people.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
My name is Carla Jean Baptiste again. I went to Widener, Delaware Law School, and I currently work in commercial insurance defense.
And my name is Tom Dockery. I went to Rutgers Law, and I currently work in extra contractual coverage.
And I'm Nate Bolander. I went to law school long before these folks. When Penn State Law was part of Dickinson, I graduated in 2011, which is a long time ago. And we're all colleagues here at Morgan, Akins Jackson.
And then I guess really quick, I am a rising 2L at the Drexel Klein School of Law and interning here for the summer. Okay, well, I have a question to start off, I guess. Why did everybody decide to go to law school?
Yeah, I can start. My family actually are immigrants. They immigrated from Haiti before I was born. So as I was growing up, my father actually worked in the court system as a translator and interpreter. So every time he would come home for work, he would tell us about court, but like he would leave out details and I wanted to know why. And of course, being in court, it can be confidential, certain things like you can't disclose. But of course, as a child, I didn't understand that. So I was just like, I'm going to grow up and be a lawyer. And then, of course, different situations happened involving immigration as well with my family that led me to want to actually learn more about how I can help. That was really my defining factor of why I went to law school. When I actually got there, it was just like a new world opened up, and it's so much that you can do with being a lawyer and with your law degree that although I didn't go into immigration, I do plan on looking into that one day in the future. But for now, that was my main driving force into going into law school.
Mine's not as family driven, but I went to law school because I didn't really know what to do. And truth be told, there was a girl at the time who went to Rutgers Law, and that kind of pushed me into the whole, I'll see what law school's about. I didn't really know anything about law school or the law. I figured I would end up being a state trooper who's going for a political science and criminal justice degree, just as, a young 20-year-old. And a girl brought me to law school.
Okay. Mine doesn't involve either of those things. So I guess we have a whole different, we have three different vantage points here. Yeah, I always remember when we started law school, we went around our law school class, and almost everyone was asked, 170 people, why they went to law school. It was part of orientation, and you'd be surprised how many people said for the money. And I think we all know that was foolhardy of them at the time. I always was interested in political science and law. My undergrad was policy studies, but it's since been renamed law and policy. So I kind of did a quasi pre-law undergrad. Favorite show growing up was Law and Order. Like debate, like to be able to represent folks who, my clients, based upon the fact that I was going to work harder than other people. I thought, hey, if I uncover things that no one else will uncover, I have a more diligent work ethic than other folks, then my client will be better represented. And I like that thought. I like the thought that the more you put into it, the more you can achieve some success in the field. So that's why I went, and it's been 13 years since I graduated, and here I sit. How about you, Marissa? You're in it now, so what's the
Right.
Yeah,
reason?
so I actually got into, well, I kind of always had an interest in law, but it didn't really hit me that like law school was something I might want to pursue until I got to high school and I did like a mock trial in one of my classes. And then I ended up joining my high school's mock trial team my junior year. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, this is something I really like. And then once I got to undergrad, I did a legal studies minor. and did mock trial there. And it was just, something I realized I definitely wanted to pursue, and I'm glad I did. And yeah, it's been good so far. It's definitely been a lot of learning, and I think I want to echo what Carla said earlier. It definitely like opened up this whole new world. And I still have 2 years left, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more of that in the next 2 years.
And the highlight has been your time with us over the summer, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Does it
been
make you more, does it make you more or less interested, and be candid, in civil litigation? Or is it an area you might want to go into?
Um, civil litigation was definitely my interest from the start, I would say. I didn't really have a lot of, well, I didn't have any experience specifically in what we do here, so it's been kind of fun to get that experience, but I definitely am still interested in civil litigation after the past few weeks at the firm. So yeah.
Good to know.
Are you involved in any curriculars currently in school that relate in any way to civil litigation?
Yeah, so I'm on the trial team at Drexel, which I'm really excited about. We started our boot camp this week for the new season. Um, so yeah, that's been fun. I was a little bit involved over this past year, even though one else can't compete or anything, but it's been fun to kind of scrimmage the team and meet everybody and kind of learn, you know, what they do before I actually go into it. And then, yeah, we had the tryout process earlier this spring semester, and we're gonna get started pretty soon. But I'm really excited just because I loved mock trial so much in college and in high school. So it's definitely like one of the things I've been most looking forward to in my whole law school experience. So
And were you able to attend any actual trials from that experience?
um you mean like
I guess what I'm going to eventually get to in a minute is versus actual trials, whether they're virtual or not, that you've been able to attend while interning here versus something you've been able to experience through school, and just how different those actually are, especially when a mock trial is typically set up to show you, I guess, just the ropes of everything.
Mhm.
And it almost never goes according to plan in real life.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely very different. Just because when you're doing mock trial, it's the whole thing's condensed into like 3 hours or sometimes even less, depending on the format of the competition. Um, but it's good experience in the sense that you get the opportunity to argue motions and write direct and cross examinations, and you're dealing with, like documents you might see when you're preparing for a trial in real life. But I would say the actual trial part of it is not fully the same as it would be in real life, just because the nature of it is like a condensed format, if that makes sense. But um I think it's still like a good way to learn and grow. It's definitely been helpful for me, like with public speaking and thinking on my feet, which I think are just like skills that you could use in any area of work, but like especially as a lawyer. So it's helpful for those things too, I would say.
So do you think experiences at Morgan Akins helps you out with the trial team going back as a second year?
Um, I well, I would say yeah. I mean, I was able to attend an oral argument. I think it was like 2 weeks ago at this point, and it was really cool to see how the attorneys argued their motions to the judge and everything, and just getting to see that's really helpful because then you can kind of apply it to when you're doing it in the competition. So yeah, I'd say definitely for sure.
Yeah, I
And one
can
thing
see
I'll
how.
say,
Oh, sorry.
okay, sorry, go ahead, Carla. Go ahead, Carla.
I was going to say that I can see how mock trial is definitely a good, well, it's very beneficial for any law student. That's something that I did not participate in, but if I could go again or give somebody a suggestion, I would absolutely suggest that because that's what you do on a day to day, especially as a litigator. It's important to have those skills. It's important to be able to know, like you said, think on your feet, public speaking, just how to present it to a court. all that is really important. You can go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that the applicability of theory to facts is sorely lacking. I mean, I think a lot of law school is, I'm sure, Marissa, you're in it. I remember it this way, but I'm sure they teach it the same way, but it's a lot of reading cases and it's just theory. You can do this, you can argue that, these statutes are applicable, these aren't, that kind of thing. But until you have a fact pattern that you have to apply that to, and it's part of that, I'm sure you've had on examinations, right? That's usually what examinations are in law school. But standing up and arguing in an oral argument setting, in a trial setting, things like that, that's a whole nother level. And I always say, when people say, what classes should I take during law school? I would say, while it's easier to take theory-based classes, and I took sports law my third year. I took some classes that were just fun and I enjoyed. I took trial advocacy, I think both semesters, my 3L year. And it was incredibly stressful and anxiety producing, and everyone's looking at you. But that's how litigating is going to go. I mean, I think if you're a transactional attorney writing wills and trusts and things, it's a little less that way. But I think if you're litigating, almost all the time, a judge, a jury, deponents, your opposition are all going to be listening to you, and you have to make decisions in a split second. I'm making the law sound like Suits. It's not that exciting, but it's a little more than just writing motions all the time and drafting discovery all the time. And may a case apply or not? It's arguing that to a judge, which is a different level of advocacy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear if you guys did any other co-curriculars. I know a lot of people do, like Move Forward Law Review, and how you found that to be helpful in your practice now.
I did trial advocacy. It was cut short because of COVID. So I had the majority of law school online with COVID, which really sucked. That I would say gave me a different perspective of law. But I also had an internship with a judge where I think is really where I got the most experience. And I don't mean that in an actual legal sense, but one time I just sat down with everyone and they were very straightforward about everything. And they said, look, we're all just people. Even the judges, they're just people. If you put them on these pedestals, you're just going to get nervous and you're just going to make mistakes. And instead, just take your argument for what it is, take the facts, take the law, and present it to them like they're actual people. And I think approaching, especially arguing motions, whether it be something with a ton of weight, like summary judgment, or something just like a basic discovery motion, I find more often than not, approaching them like they're people is the best way to go about it. And one of the things involved is that it's just synthesizing arguments, especially in law school with this theory stuff. It's so easy to say, I can argue A through Z, all of this stuff applies and whatnot. But in real life, A through Z, sure, it still applies, but maybe it's just A and B that actually look good or sound good, and you can actually convince someone of something. So by sticking with those two things instead of the whole alphabet, you're much more likely to end up with a successful ruling for the client. And that was long-winded to your answer, but
Yeah. No, that's helpful.
I agree completely. I clerked for a judge too during law school. I externed, it was called, for a judge for 2 years. And I think the most valuable part of that experience was twofold. One is to see what good advocacy versus bad is, right? If you attend hundreds of oral arguments and you read hundreds of briefs and hundreds of motions, you see just from reading them, the plaintiff made a great point. Defendants have no retort, or plaintiffs really don't have a leg to stand on here, or they didn't present their side well. It's poor grammatically, it's poor substantively. That's part of it. Another part is, like Tom was saying, I spoke to the judge I externed for a lot. We'd get a very in-depth motion. I would write my opinion about how I think I should go. And His Honor was great at, bringing me into chambers and saying, why do you think that? What did they say? What's the case? What's the controlling case? Why do you believe X, Y, and Z? And sometimes he agreed and sometimes he didn't. But to see the machination of a judge's ruling come into fruition, based on advocacy we were seeing and we were taking in chambers was really, really helpful to see what worked and what didn't. And Tom's right. The more lean you are, the better. I mean, people think you're at a 50-page brief, it's gonna be better than a 5-page brief. Not always, because the main argument gets lost.
And also the clerk sometimes doesn't read all 50 pages.
No, sometimes,
Sometimes.
sometimes. Yeah.
I would say my experience, although not necessarily co-curricular, I did do an externship during COVID with Senior Law Center, but that's more transactional work with wills and trusts and things. But during majority of my time in law school, I worked at a law firm in Westchester, and it was beneficial for me because I got to see the day to day. Like I did a lot of, something as simple as an entry of appearance that in law school you wouldn't really know that that's something that even had to be done, or contacting clients, speaking with your clients directly also is just as important as everything else in the litigation process. So my experience at working at this firm, seeing the other attorneys going to court, I would assist them with like little smaller tasks, of course, because I wasn't so I was here during like in between college and law school. So it was still somewhat before I even had gotten into school, but it's just beneficial being around a legal environment, very hands-on, being able to be in front of a judge, in front of another attorney, where you can ask those questions. It's just beneficial to the whole experience in general.
Yeah, I agree, Carla. I worked as a legal assistant before I started law school, and just doing those things like entry of appearance or, looking at the rules of civil procedure to like make sure I have all my deadlines and stuff. Um, that's some stuff I feel like we touched upon a little bit in classes like Civ Pro and all that, but I feel like because I had that experience going into it, I knew some of the specifics and had like that background that was really helpful for me too. So I totally agree with you there. And then I know we kind of talked about this, but are you all in like a practice area you anticipated yourself being in, like specifically, or did you see yourself doing something different?
I thought I was going to be a prosecutor. Uh, didn't have the stomach for it. Also, it makes significantly less money than I think I could survive on. Um, Ended up going commercial trucking for a little bit. Despise that more than anything. And I found extra contractual coverage, which no one really grows up thinking, hey, I can't wait to read policies all day that are 500 pages and make a determination on it. And I get why, but it can be a lot of fun, as lame as that might sound, just with all the crazy nuances between insurance policies, whether they're auto or homeowners, business, whatever they may be, and how difficult it is to prove certain things versus how easy it is to prove other things. And with how vague some of these policies are written, it gives you a lot of that ability that you thought you'd use in law school, where it's a situation where you can theorize a ton. And with vague policies, sometimes they're vague, sometimes they're not. You can have the option to theorize, especially the plaintiffs. They love to do that, and then responding to them, it's kind of like a big chess game, except for the pieces somehow have a lot more moves than a regular chess game, and they change depending on who you're playing against. And it's a little bit of chaos. It's actually a lot of chaos, but it can also be a lot of fun.
So I would say, well, no, obviously, in the beginning, I told you guys that I was interested in immigration coming in. And like to this day, my family still asks me, like, aren't you an immigration lawyer? Absolutely not. But uh, although my interest did change, it's just like I said in the beginning, it's so much that you can do with this degree. It's so much that you can do with being a lawyer, barred, regardless of where you're barred, how you're barred, if you're UBE or if you pass the single state. It's so much that you can do. Um, so yeah, no, my interests have absolutely changed, but I'm enjoying my time learning. Um, learning as much as I can about insurance defense and, wanted to get a good handle on that. So far, my year here with Morgan Atkins is actually August like 8th or something. So I'll be a full year here. And yeah, I also worked in asbestos before this. I worked in finance, doing compliance work. So I've been all over the place as a lawyer, but I definitely don't regret it. I love to be able to see as much as I can in my workspace. So I'm perfectly fine with the decisions I've made, though.
And I was dissuaded from what I wanted to do the first week of law school. I went to law school wanting to be a sports agent. I met with the sports and entertainment law, and I love him, so I hope he doesn't. I mean, he'll never watch this, but if he ever did, I'm not besmirching him in any way. But I met with him, and he was the head of that society and that group and that clinic in law school as a professor. And he said, "Happy to work with you, happy to mentor you. Couldn't have been nicer." But just said, just be aware that to make a career solely out of being a sports agent is extraordinarily rare. I mean, it's almost as rare as being an athlete itself. I mean, you're competing against these monster companies with tons and tons of Ivy League trained attorneys. There's only so many athletes to go around that actually make enough money that your cut of it when they sign a new contract will keep you afloat. So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind and said it'd be great to do, but I'm just going to kind of abandon that. I'll do that if the stars align, and they never did, which is fine. And then after that, when I got out of law school, I wanted to do what Tom did. I wanted to be a prosecutor, and I actually applied to the Philly DA's office 3 or 4 times. I mean, and I was told through some internal back channels that you're one of I don't know how many applicants, and we accept X amount, and it was just not going to happen. So I clerked for a judge, and after that clerkship was over, interviewed with the current managing partner's predecessor was brought on, and I've really enjoyed it. But I know you're looking at a failed sports agent. There's probably a lot of us out there.
Some of the biggest like piece of advice I've gotten from attorneys is just keep like a really open mind about what you want to do. And Carla's right, there's so much you can do with the degree. So I think it's cool that it can just lead you to all these different paths and everything.
Yep.
I would say though, like having the benefit of having your mind made up or knowing what direction you want to go in is beneficial in law school as well. Because, like for instance, someone like me that worked in finance, it was a little difficult in the job search looking for a newer position somewhere else because it's like, okay, well, you don't really have experience in this range. And even being fresh out of law school, that can be somewhat difficult. So if you know that, you enjoy litigation, for instance, you like being on mock trial. So if you take trial advocacy, you'd have a better chance of getting into a litigation position rather than someone who's only done transactional work. And it's not that it's not possible or it's not able to happen, but it's just, if you have an idea of what you like, it's okay to stick by that also. So that would be my piece of advice too.
Yep, that's a good one. I would also say that if you're in a position where you're interacting with other attorneys fresh out of law school, you're interacting with older attorneys, make as many contacts as you can, exchange business. Are business cards still a thing? I mean, I'm ancient, but I mean, do people still do that?
I do.
Marissa,
I still
do you know what a
get
business card
mine.
is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I
I
think
didn't know if
most
that
of
was
them.
still a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, what I did actually, it's kind of interesting. When I clerked for the judge I clerked for after law school, I met tons of attorneys, and I would talk to them waiting for their orders in the hallway. I'd talk to them before a hearing would begin, and I made connections with hundreds of attorneys, learned a lot of good and bad of how to advocate, and just maybe a year ago we got a new complaint in. It was assigned to me by one of my clients, and it was one of the attorneys who was frequently before the judge I clerked for. And I called him and said, "Hey, remember me?" And he said, "Yep, remember you." And it was a nice start. It started things off on a nice foot because we remember, sitting out waiting for orders or before a hearing started for hours sometimes. And so I think that's the other thing is if you're in a position right out of law school where you're still feeling out what you want to do, if you, I don't know, go to bar happy hours or clerk for a judge and speak to other attorneys like I did or whatever. I mean, I think it's just good to have as many legal contacts as you can because you never know where your path's going to take you.
Yeah, Nate, I definitely wanted to touch on that as well because with the co-curriculars that Marissa asked about in the beginning, well, extracurricular activities, I was a part of the Black Law Student Association at my law school and for the Mid-Atlantic region well, the Mid-Atlantic region, obviously. So I was in contact with a lot of attorneys regularly. So although throughout law school, I wasn't really sure where I was going to end up, I was able to get in contact with so many people that I'm still in contact with to this day. Although my school was in Delaware, we did have a kind of close connection with the Barristers of Philadelphia. So even now as a practicing attorney, I am a part of the Barristers of Philadelphia. That's a part of the Bar Association. And these are people that see me when I was a 1L. So they know where I am now. They know my position now. And they know the journey that I got to get to where I am today. So just being able to be in contact with as many attorneys, judges, even paralegals, like you never know who you might need one day. So it's important to go to those events, the bar happy hours, the anything that's involving meeting more attorneys is important.
Yep.
I'm part of the Women's Law Society at Drexel, and we had a networking, well, it was like a panel, and then we did a little bit of like a networking thing after. And so there were a bunch of women alumni who came in and talked about their experiences after Drexel, and it was really nice to hear from them and kind of have a ton of like representation, and you could connect with people and just have people who like you feel like could support you who are now out of law school. So I think that's a really good point for sure.
Yep. And Wendy, Wendy's the poster child for connection. She is the most connected person I know. There's times where I've just sent her random emails like a friend of a friend needs an attorney in South Dakota. She's like, yeah, here, Frank Jones. I'm like, okay, you spend a lot of time in South Dakota, Wendy. She just knows everyone. And that's important because I think one of the things people think is, you get assigned cases and you're excited to represent your client. But it just happened to me today where a client reached out to me and said, can you handle this case? I said, no, we can't. We're not in that geographic area. But here's someone that is. And there's two really good kind of two really good developments from that. One is you've helped the client and they'll, even though you can't handle it, they'll remember it. And so will the new, and then number two is so will the attorney that you sent that assignment to, assuming that the client goes with that new attorney. So while you can't help, while you can't help directly, you can help indirectly. And, Wendy has, in her career balanced work with development of contacts and connections to an amazing degree. And it's paid off for her. She knows everyone. She knows everyone and she knows people in every state and can always attend a conference and can always share everything that people need. And it's being a connector like that's really important.
Well, I'd love to know, is there like a piece of advice that you would give to maybe an incoming 1L that you wish you knew before law school?
Okay. I would say, be disciplined. Like you have to be disciplined, not only in, making sure, okay, I have an assignment due at this day at 12 o'clock. Like, okay, you'll get it done, but be disciplined in how you go over your notes after class and how you study and how you write your outlines. Keep up with that because that's something that if you don't have that together in the beginning, it might take you too long to get it together by the end. So if you want to actually stay on top of yourself and your work, definitely have a plan. Have a plan and be disciplined.
Mine would be more towards take law school for what it is in terms of it's basically just a bunch of theories. Try to spend the summers either ideally one with a firm and then with a judge if you're not going to clerk afterwards. And that's because of how many people, in my experience, leave law school. And the first thing that happens is they see a pleading and they have no idea what it is because they don't teach you anything about complaints, answers, new matters, whatever it may be. All you do in law school is you write one summary judgment and one sort of weird memorandum that you're never going to look at again. And to just take all of that with a grain of salt for when you actually get out. And while you're in law school, just take as many bar classes as you can because you're just going to need to pass the bar. That's the unfortunate reality of it. But once you're done, don't expect it to be anything like, you just spent the past 3 years doing. And also, that's as it might come across as a negative thing. I think for most people that could be a very positive thing because law school kind of sucks. It's just getting through that to get to a significantly better point in your life.
That's dire, Tom. Law school sucks. I mean,
It does.
law school is very. Carla touched on this too, but law school is very difficult because you're used to in your academic career, whether it's high school or college or a master's degree before law school or whatever, you have incremental grades as you go, right? You have a quiz, you have a couple tests, you have a couple class participation element to it. And law school, I mean, the majority of my classes, at least back in the day, were on the syllabus, you said final exam, and then you go over to the right and it says 100%. That's it. You got to be on the final exam, you got to be for the class. There's no other, now there's some people that counted some other things, but that's the way most of them were. So that's very difficult for folks that are used to kind of incremental grades and you kind of see where you're at halfway through the semester. There is no see where you're at. You have to be prepared the whole time to be ready for the end. The one thing I always tell folks, I just spoke to a rising senior in college recently who wanted to go to law school. They said, any advice? I'd give everyone the same piece of advice. I said, make sure you want to go. Make sure you want to do this as your career. Don't look at this as 3 more years of college or, well, it looks good to, my parents or, it's not that it's a lot to do. It's a lot of money, time, effort, stress, anxiety, to do as kind of a placeholder because you don't know what to do with your life. I took 2 years off. I mean, I graduated undergrad and then I worked for 2 years. And during those 2 years, I decided to go back to law school at 25. And one thing I learned about that process is the people that did that took it a little more seriously. When you leave a paycheck to go back to school, you're there for a reason. You're a little older, so your life is, a little more progressed, but you also know that you were doing just fine. You're out there doing just fine, earning your money, paying your rent, going out with your friends, and you go back to school versus the people that went right through tended to be, and not always, but tended to be more like in the college mode, right? This is more college, more college, more college, and kind of stay in that bubble. So I always tell people, if you're not sure, go work in several different areas. You can always go back at 25, 6, 7 years old and be fine, but don't just do it to do it and because you think it sounds good.
Yeah, I agree. I think taking a gap year was such a good thing that I did for myself for law school. Just from, getting all that experience and everything that you said, Nate. But I definitely also want to touch on, law school is such a huge investment. I think one of the most important things you can do, and this is just having 1 year under my belt, but I your school obviously has probably like a bunch of resources for you, like your career strategies office, or we have like these academic skills workshops at Drexel that are hosted weekly where you can kind of focus on different things, like issue spotting, things like that. And they weren't always full, but I think it's really important for people to go because you can kind of spend some time working on like these really important skills you need to develop to do well on your final exams, which, oftentimes are 100% of your grade. And, sometimes you need to seek out like extra hypos from your professor, which you probably was not something you did in college. So just like making sure you're doing everything you can to be prepared for the final, I think is super important. And really like utilizing all that your school has to offer to help you out because they really, do want you to succeed. So I think that's super important as well.
There are some gems unearthed in office hours.
Yeah.
You go to office hours, you just, it shows initiative on your part and professors are really willing to help you out. I remember before a final exam, I said, I remember a real tough time with this one, I forget what it was, some doctrine. And I think the professor gave me an old exam, so I'm not going to use any of these questions. Here, this is what an exam might look like. And it was not, I mean, the exam wasn't the same, but it really was helpful to look at that. I don't think that professor gave it to everyone. I think it was just because I was in office hours that day. So that's office hours, I think, are extremely important.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off that too. Just saying office hours, not only that their teacher knows your face, they know you're trying. Yeah, it just shows that you're serious about what you're doing, you're serious about what you're learning. Like you never know what extra gem they might have for you. One thing that my school had that I utilized very often was an outline bank too. And that also the teachers also submitted some old exams or something. So if you might not have it, somebody else might, study groups, whatever in that sense that could help you succeed, because although law school can be dog eat dog because we all know the curve. So as important as that is, but having people help you that's around you, people that you can trust, not only just your professors also, but having a little study group. Because what I might understand, you might not understand, or how you explain something might help somebody else in the group better than how I can explain it. So it's important to have those good groups around you.
You have other questions for us, Marissa?
I don't think
Anything
so. I
else?
think we
Okay.
we touched on everything I really could think of.
Are
Yeah.
we're wise beyond our years or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, I think this was a very good conversation, and, a lot of helpful things for, me going into my second year, but also for any incoming one else who might be watching. So thank
Gotcha.
you
Well,
for
you
your,
you can always reach out to us too. I mean, during the law school year,
Yes.
thank
Yeah,
we're
we'll give
always
you our
happy to help.
business cards.
Yeah.
They still exist.
Yeah, right. Mine have the old firm name on them, so I don't even. I mean, I guess I
Then
have to
give
ditch
her a
them and get
bunch
new
of them.
ones.
Problem solved.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Perfect. Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you all.
All right.
No
Thanks, guys.
problem.
All
Thanks,
right,
guys. Have
thanks.
a good one.